and then we'll see how to create a object using a constructor, and then we'll tell you about private, privileged, public and static member properties in JavaScript, and then we'll look at JavaScript object property and how can we access the JavaScript properties. Yeah, so coming to the creation of JavaScript object, so there are three ways in which we can create the object in JavaScript. Okay, so naming them as, first one is object literal, second one is through constructor, and third one is through object.create function. Okay, so let's go through them one by one. So I have this template ready. So first of all, I'm going through the object literal. So what is object literal? Object literal is a comma separated list of name value pairs and wrapped in curly braces. This is the simplest form of creation of an object. Okay, so let's say I create an object where person equals curly braces. So this is the simplest way of creating a object. Okay, as you know, this is an object now. Although there is no property inside this person object, but person is an object. Okay, now what we can do is we can add properties to it. Let's say name, I say John, and let's say age, I say 29, and let's add some salary, let's say some 10,000. Okay, so here what I have done, I have created a object. Okay, using the simplest form, which is object literal. This curly braces notation with key value pairs separated by a comma. This is called as the object literal. Okay, so this is the first way by which you can create the object. And how to access it? Simple. Let's write console.log. So it will print in the console tab of the browser. And what do I print? I say person.name. Okay, and here I can append name. Okay, and similarly I say console.log of age, and here I say person.age, and similarly the third property, which is salary, person.salary. Let's save this and open it in browser. So if you already know that if you press F12 in Chrome, this window will open, which is called also called as developers console, and here you will get this tab as console. Okay, so when you write console.log, it will get printed here. Okay, as you can see, we are already having this name, age and salary of the object, right? Which all these properties which we have printed here. Okay, so this is a one of the ways of creation of object using object literal. Now, as you can see here, that there is no scope of reusability. We cannot reuse this code in any way and create some other objects with some other properties, right? This is a fixed, you can say a hard coding, or you can say this is fixed. If you want to create another object of a person to add these properties, what you have to do is you have to write the same code again and again, right? Suppose for person 1, or you want person 1, you want another object. Okay, then what you have to do, you have to copy paste all these values and put it here, right? Like this, and then you have to assign some other properties. Let's say max, and age is some 20, salary some 20,000, right? So similarly you have to go on. So what will happen, your code is not reusable, right? So to make reusable code, which is one of the fundamentals of OOPS concepts, which is object orientedness, is reusability, right? So when you want reusability, so what you have to do is you have to choose the second way of creation of object, and the second way is using constructor function. Let's start writing a constructor function. I write how to write a function by writing function, and let's say I say person constructor. Okay, and yeah, definition starts. Now what I will do is I will accept these three parameters: name, age, and salary, right? And then what I have to do is I have to write this dot name equals this parameter name, and this dot age equals age, this second parameter, and this dot salary equals salary, the third parameter. Okay, now what you got is you got the reusability. Okay, and let's do one more thing. I write one more function inside this, one more property which will be a function, which is get person details. Okay, and let's say it just alerts. What it will alert, it will alert all the values: name plus, let's append a space, this dot age, and this dot salary. Okay, now what we will do is we will create the objects of this constructor function, whose name is person constructor. Okay, let's comment out this code and we focus on the constructor. Now what I do is I create an object. Let's say person is John, where John equals new person constructor, and what it will expect, it will expect three parameters. So let's say first one is John, and second one is age, third one is some salary. Okay, and then what I do is I call it this function get person details. I say John dot get person details. What this will do, this will alert the values of the object John, and John is having these values: name is John, age is 29, and this is the salary. Now if I save this and I go to browser, yeah, here I clear this, and when I refresh, as you can see, it prints John 29 and its salary, right? So this is the second way of creation of object. Let's press OK. Now here we have created only one object, but what you have is you have the flexibility of creating as many objects you want. Let's say tomorrow you want to add another object for using this same constructor function. What you have to do? You have to simply write one single line. Okay, like this, and you have to write pass the values. Simple. Okay, and then what you have to do is you have to simply write max dot get person details. As simple as that. Okay, let's go to the browser and see what is the output. I go here when I refresh. So first alert comes for the first object, which is John. Its age is 29 and this is its salary. If I press OK, it immediately calls the second function, second object, and its values. Max, age is 20 and this is salary. Okay, so this is the place where you got the reusability concept in place. Okay, now using this person constructor, you can create as many objects you want. Okay, so that's what the power of object orientedness. Okay, now let's move on to the third kind of implementation, or you can say creation of a object. So what is the third type? Third type is using object.create function. So what I do is I comment out this one and I uncomment the previous one. Okay, so here what we were having one person object which is John. Okay, now what you want is, let's say some requirement comes that you want the exact copy of this person object. Okay, that means you want to clone this object. So how to do a clone in a JavaScript is you can make use of, there is a function which is dot create, and that create function is with the object. What is that object? Capital OBJECT. What is this? This is the parent of all the objects in JavaScript. Okay, this is the parent of all the objects. One thing you have to see is this is capital O. Okay, so you can say this is the topmost object. As you know, everything in object is, and everything in JavaScript is object. Okay, a function, a property, or a name, everything is an object. And who is the topmost parent of an object? This object. Okay, so with this object, you got a lot of capabilities. One of such capabilities dot create function. Okay, so let's say I write where I say ABC, and then I say object dot create. Okay, and what this object dot create expects? This expects one parameter. And what is that parameter? That parameter has to be the name of the object of which you want the copy. Okay, the object which you want to copy, or you can say you want to clone. All right, like here we want to clone the person object, so we will pass it here function. Okay, now what we got is we got exact values inside ABC which are inside person. Okay, let's write, let's print the properties of ABC. I say name, and here I have to write ABC dot name, and I copy paste them. And second one is age, and third one is salary. Okay, So what I'm doing here, I have created one object using object literal notation, and then I am printing all the three values, and then at line number 28 I am again creating the object using objects create function. Okay, and then I am passing I am printing all the three values of ABC object. Let's save this and see the output in browser. When I go here and refresh, yeah, as you can see here, let's close this and again refresh. Yeah, as you can see, first of all, at line number 23, 24 and 25, right? John 29 and 10,000 is getting printed. Now again at line number 30, 31, 32, where is our ABC object comes up, right? Here also the same values are getting printed, right? That means all the values from person object are getting copied inside this ABC object. All right. So that is the object.create function. Okay. So let's go through a little theory. As you can see, objects literal encapsulate data and closing it in that ID package. This minimizes the usage of global variables, which can cause problems when combining code. So this is one example where name of the object equals curly braces, and inside the curly braces you have key value pairs. This is the key, this is the value, right? And again, this is the key, this is the value. And key value pairs are differentiated using comma. Okay. And what is inside, what is the delimiter, or you can say what is the separator used to show key and value is colon. Okay, that means key colon value and then comma again key colon value. Okay, this is the syntax of you creating a object literal. Second one, as I told, is using constructor. So in this constructor you have to make use of this. What this will do, this will point to the current object. As you can see here, we are creating a new person for object my father, and so my father is the object. So that means all the four values which I am passing here will be passed to my father object. And how this will happen? This will happen because this pointer is there, right? Because this points to the current calling object. Currently this variable my father is calling this new person, so all these values will point to my father. Okay, so this is the object creation of object using constructor. And third one was, as I already told, is object.create. Now next comes is a yeah next comes is private, privileged, public and static members. Okay, so let's go here and let's remove this code. We don't need any of this now. So what I do is I create this function kid. Okay, and yeah, let's write a function kid, and let's say it accepts one parameter. So this is the function. Okay, now what I do is I add some properties to it. First one is as simple as that, this dot name. Okay, and what I do is I create one private property inside this. Let's say idle. Okay, and it is having some Paris Hilton. Okay, now what I do is I add one more property which is of function type. which is get idle, and it will be a function, and it returns, let's say, idle. Okay, so I returned idle. Now what I do is I add another function which returns the name. Okay, so let's add get name function as well. This dot get name, and it's of type function. And what it returns this dot name. Okay, and then what I do is I create one static property as well. Let's say kid dot town, and it says South Park. Okay, so now what we have done here, we have created one function whose name is kid, and it accepts one parameter. All right, and then inside this function definition, what I have done, I have created one property. Okay, which is where idle equals some Paris Hilton. Okay, now at line number 19, if you can see here, I have used this, but in line number 17, while creating this idle property, I haven't used this. Okay, the reason behind it is what this does. This makes a property public. Public means you can access it directly using creation of an object of kid. Okay, so as soon as you create an object of kid, this name property will come with it directly. But this where idle will not be accessible to the objects of kid. Why? Because this is a private property. Okay, and this one is public property. All right, just like that, same. This get name is also a public property because the objects which creates using kid will get the access to this get name function. Okay, now coming to this is also having this dot get idle, but still I am not telling it as a public. Why? Because it is not giving you access to a public variable, but it is giving you access to a private variable. As you can see, this idle, you cannot directly access this idle outside this kid directly. You cannot write kid dot idle, or you cannot write any object of kid and dot idle, because this idle is a private property. But using this get idle function, you are getting the access of this idle. This is the same local variable, and this function is returning it. So such kind of functions which give you access to the local variables, or you can say private variables, are called as privileged properties. Okay, that means this function is privileged because it is giving you a privilege to access a private property of a function. Okay, and this property which we have added directly to the function level kid.town, such a kind of property is called as static property. Okay, now let's do one thing. I create some object of kid and then try to access these properties. Okay, what I do is I create one, suppose John equals new kid, and name of the kid is John. Okay. Now what I do is, let's say alert of John dot name. Okay, we can directly access the name because name is a public property. Let's see what will happen when I refresh our web page. I go here and I click on refresh. As you can see, John is getting printed in alert box, right? That means it is accessible directly. And same thing which you can achieve is using this getName function. Okay, you can directly write here getName and call it. This will also do the same thing. Why? Because it is giving you access to the same name which you are passing. Let's save this and see. I go here and when I refresh, it still says the same thing, John. Right? Now, next comes is the access of this private property idle. Okay. So what I do is, let's try it directly. I created one object of kid, John, and John.idle. Let's see if it comes. I save this and I go in the browser and refresh. What it prints, as you can see, it is printing undefined. Right? Why? Because this idle property is private to this kid function. Okay. However, what I'm doing, I'm trying to access this idle property via. I go here and I refresh. As you can see now, it is printing Paris Hilton. Right? So that is how you access a private property, by making use of privileged properties. And next is accessing a static property, which is very simple. Static properties also doesn't come up with the object. Let's try. What I do is I write John.town. Okay. Let's save this and see if it works. I go to the browser and refresh. As you can see, it is giving undefined. Right? Because static properties are also not associated with the object, but static properties are associated with the name of the function. So what I have to do is, I have to write, instead of John, I have to write here kid. Okay. And when I save this, I go to browser and refresh. It prints South Park. What is South Park? This is a South Park. Okay. If any one of you might be aware of Java, in Java also we have the static properties, and static properties are associated with the class name. We access the static members by class name dot static property name. They also doesn't come up with object. Okay, same concept applies here. So that's the concept of private and privileged properties. So next comes is JavaScript object property. So what are properties in JavaScript object? Properties are the most important part of any JavaScript object, right? As you can see here, okay, we removed that person object. Let's say, let's create one where person equals this. Does this person have anything? No, right? Why is it not having anything? Because it's not having any property inside it. Although it exists, although the person is an object, but it's an empty object. It is not having any properties. Okay, if you compare it to a real life like a human, okay, and it's just a human. Let's say a human being who doesn't have eyes, who doesn't have any sense of like senses, sense of vision, sense of hearing, right? It doesn't have any properties. Okay, so that you can say like an empty object. Okay, so object without property doesn't matter, right? It doesn't have any significance. Okay, so properties are the values associated with a JavaScript object. A JavaScript object is a collection of unordered properties. So what is the meaning of unordered here? Unordered means it can contain any type of properties inside it. It doesn't require to be a particular kind like only string or only number or only booleans. It can contain multiple types, right? It can contain like person name is in string, his age is in number, right? So that is called as the unordered properties. And properties can be usually changed, added, deleted anytime. Okay, so what is the meaning of anytime here? You created one object, let's say you created one object here, and here I was having some name, right? Age and salary, right? So what you can do is you have created this object here, but what you can do is you can change the properties anytime. What is the meaning of anytime? Let's say alert. Here I say person dot salary. Okay. First of all, let me remove this function. All right. Now what I do is at next step, I change the value of salary. Now I increase the salary to 30,000 and I again write this alert. Let's see what will happen. When I go here and I refresh, first of all, it says 20,000. So line number 22 is printing as 20,000. If I press on OK, again the alert comes with 30,000. Okay. So that's what I want to say here, that you can change the value of properties anytime. Okay, currently it was having 20,000, then I changed it to 30,000. And when I print the property, it picks the new value. Okay, so that is the changing of properties anytime. Okay, so next comes the accessing the JavaScript properties. So how to access the JavaScript properties? As you can see here at line number 22, how I am accessing the property salary using dot, right? What is this dot? This dot is the notation which you use like object name dot property name, right? So this is first kind of notation which you can use to access the properties. Okay, let's save this and see if it is working. I refresh. Yes, it is working, right? Now what you can do is there is another notation which you can use to print the properties is array notation. Okay, what is that array notation? You can use person and then this array braces, and inside this you can pass name of the property which you want to show. Okay, like this at line number 24. Person, here we are not using dot, right? We are using a array notation, and inside the array notation you have to pass name of the property as a string. As you can see here, salary, I am passing it as a string inside the single quotes. Okay, let's save this and see if two alerts will come with property 20,000. Okay, I save it and see the output. I go here, and when I refresh, so this is the first alert which is saying 20,000, and if I press on OK, next alert comes immediately with the array notation and same value of 20,000. Okay, so this is the second way of accessing the properties, and this is called as the array notation. First one was called as dot notation, second one is called as array notation. Okay, yeah, so this is all from my side for today's session. Let's discuss the assignments. Before going to that, I would like to ask if anyone has any doubts in today's session. If anyone has any doubts, they can unmute yourself and can speak, ask your doubts. Yes, no. Okay, Om and Santosh says no doubts. What about Vijay and Harshini? Any doubts? Okay, Vijay says no. What about you, Harshini? Okay, no problem. So let's move on to the discussion of assignments. Yeah. So this is the first assignment which you have to do is create an object type using car. Create an object of type car using a constructor function. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to create one object from car constructor function. First of all, you have to create one constructor function car. Okay. And in that car constructor function, what you have to do is you have to make these properties: make, model, and year. Okay. So what is make, model, and year? These are the properties of constructor function car. All right. And then what you have to do is you have to create two objects of this car. Okay. Using this car function, you have to create two objects, and then you have to alert their properties. Okay. So basically you have to reuse the function. That is why you are creating a constructor function, and then using that constructor function, create two objects of car. Okay. And this has to have three properties: make, model, and year. All right. So this is the first assignment which you have, and yeah, there are two assignments only for today. So this is the second assignment. So what second assignment says? It says create two public variables and four functions. Okay, you have to create four functions, and what are name of four functions? Add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Okay, so these are the four basic operations of a calculator. So basically you have to create one basic calculator, and all these 4 functions except 2 variables or 2 parameters. Okay, and perform their respective operations. That is add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Okay, that means you have to pass 2 parameters to all these functions, and they should perform the respective operations. And inside that, what you have to do is these functions should also contain a private variable and alert them. So you have to create one private variable inside each function. That means add, subtract, multiply, and divide should have each one private variable which will store the result of the operation. Let's say addition is there. So what you have to do is create one variable c. Variable c equals a plus b. What is a and b? A and b are the parameters to add function. Okay, and then alert c. Alert the value of c. All right. So that's one example. Okay. And yeah, as you can see here, create 2 public variables. What are these 2 public variables? These are the parameters which you will pass to all those 4 functions. Okay. So that is the second assignment for you. So for today, we have only these 2 assignments. Okay. Anyone has any doubts in assignments? Anyone would like to ask anything? Okay, Vijay says no. Who else? Okay. Om also says no. Okay. Yeah. So if no one has any doubts, then we can close the call and let's meet day after tomorrow for the next session.